Okay, let's talk about factoring quadratics, specifically in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Right, so we're going to actually have a leading coefficient now, an a term. All right, so factoring. Exact same thing. It doesn't matter if we have a leading coefficient, so an a term other than that's not 1. The same thing applies, right? Factoring is just reverse of distribution. That's all it is. So let's say I have x minus 2 times 4x plus 3. Well, same distribution. I'm going to do x times 4x, x times 3, negative 2 times 4x, and negative 2 times 3. The distribution rules still apply. Right? It just, our result will be a little bit more complex. That's all. So I'll get a 4x squared, and the 3 times this 1x is 3x, and negative 2 times 4 is 8x, negative 6, and that all simplifies down to 4x squared minus 5x minus 6. Okay, so the gist is, if this leading coefficient is 1, then it's x and x. There's no leading coefficient. But as soon as this leading coefficient is something other than 1, we're going to start getting numbers in front of these x's. All right, so it just makes it a little bit more complicated. Same thing as before, though. This last term, this constant, had to have come from the two constants in the factors, which means the factors of negative 6 will be those two numbers. Now, the middle term, this negative 5, is now a nice combination, just like it was before, right? But before it was negative 2 times x and not a 4x. But it was the same thing. It's always a combination of the constants in the factor times the x components, right? It always was, all right? So nothing has changed, right? We just have to, it's just a little bit more complicated to figure out all the pieces, that's all. All right, so let's try this. So here is our x minus 2 times 4x plus 3. We did our distribution. We got 4x squared minus 5x minus 6. So that's what I want to factor. So let's say I start with this and I want to factor. So somehow I have to figure out that the constant's multiple of negative 2 times 3, and the inside part is a combination of 3x minus 8x, and this minus 8x came from negative 2 times 4, right? Okay, so if I do this, let's factor the first term, just like we did before. So 4x squared can either be 4x times x or 2x times 2x. Now let's factor the constant, so negative 6. Negative 6 can be 1 times negative 6, negative 1 times 6, negative 2 times 3, or 2 times negative 3. All right, so simple. We just factor first, factor last. Now we need a combination of the red and the blue, right, multiply together, that adds up to be this negative 5x. That's what we're looking for. All right, and this is where it gets just a little bit more complicated. All right, so here are my red factors, my leading coefficients, right? Here are my blue factors, my constants. And now I need a combination that adds up to negative 5x. Well, let's just start. Let's do 1 times 4x and negative 6 times x. Let's see what we get. So 1 times 4x minus 6 times x is a negative 2x. Well, that is not the the minus 5x we're looking for. So that combination does not work. Well, let's try then 1 times 2x and negative 6 times 2x. If I do that, I get a 1 times 2x, then a negative 6 times 2x. This will actually be, 2x minus 12x is negative 10x. Well, that's not the negative 5 I'm looking for, right? So I keep doing this. So then maybe I do negative 1 and 6 times 4x and x. And then I go back and forth. And I could even do, in this case, I could do negative 6 times 4x and 1 times x. So you can see there's a lot of different combinations. And that's what makes this more interesting, right? A little bit more complex. So it turns out that if I do negative 2 times 4x and 3 times x, I'll get a negative 8x plus 3x equals negative 5x. All right, and you'll see it's kind of deep into these factors. So you're going to have to do a lot of, kind of guess and checking. But it turns out that this is the combination of the blue factors and the red factors that will give me negative 5x. So if I have this quadratic, and I know this is the combination, negative 2 times 4x plus 3 times x, that's the combination that will give me negative 5x. That's all I need. Right, so I can now do my factors. So I need a negative 2, right? So I need this negative 2 times 4x to be multiplied together. When we factor, if you want things to multiply together, they cannot go in the same parentheses. So I need to put that 4x and that minus 2 in different parentheses. Right? If they're in the same parentheses, they will never multiply together because distribution doesn't work like that. So that means now I need that 3 times x to go in opposite parentheses as well. So I'll put the 3 on the left and the x on the right, and then these are my factors. All right. So if you go to the beginning, that's exactly what we had. 4x plus 3 times x minus 2. That's our deal. All right. Okay, so let's stop the video, and you want to complete just the distribution and factoring table. All right, so it's the first page of the classwork. Okay, let's factor this one. 12x squared plus 2x minus 2. I'm just going to go through the pieces. So the first thing I need are 12x squared factors. So that's 1 times x, 12 times x. You'll notice, I'm not going to do that yet, but you'll notice it's a plus 2 and a minus. That's going to kind of help me with my factors. But the 12x squared, I don't really, when I do the factors of the leading coefficient of the x squared, I don't need to do the negative factors because it'll all sort out with this, or the signs at least. Well, I can sort out with this, the sign of this this factor, right? So I don't need to change the sign of the x squareds. I'll just use the signs of the minus 2 to make it happen, right? Okay, so 12x squared is 1x times 12x, 2x times 6x, and 3x times 4x, right? This should be an x right here. So actually, just let me fix that real fast. Okay, so this should be an x. Okay, so now I have 3x times 4x. Because again, the multiples of these have to equal this first term. So it doesn't make sense that this will just be 12x. It's got to be 12x squared. All right, now let's do negative 2. So the factors of negative 2 are negative 1 times 2 and 1 times negative 2. Now I need my combinations, right, that are going to add up to be 2x. And it turns out my combination is 2 times 3x, which is 6x. And then plus, which will be a minus 1 times 4x, which will be minus 4x. So 6x minus 4x is 2x. Right? Again, if you can't see this, you just work on the combinations. You do negative 1 times 1x plus 2 times 12x, see if it equals 2x. If it doesn't, then maybe you go the other way. You go 2 times 1x, and then negative 1 times 12x, and see what it equals. So each one of these has 2 combinations, right? So in this one, right, there's 2 possibilities for blue in this first red. There's 2 for this one and 2 for this one, which is 6. And then 2 again, or 6 for all of these. So there's actually 12 possible combinations. And if you can't see the combination, you might have to do all 12, all right? Okay, well, we got this combination. So it's 2 times 3x, and then negative 1 times 4x. So if I want the 2 times the 3x to multiply together, they need to be in separate parentheses. So 3x and 2. And if I want the negative 1 and the 4 to be multiplied together, they need to be in separate parentheses. All right, so that would be the factors of 12x squared plus 2x minus 2. All right. All right. So that's actually the end of the video. So just stop this and complete the classwork.